Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Francis. So, good morning once again, guys. So, for this morning, we are going to continue with our discussion with regards to carbohydrates. So, allow me to share first my screen. Okay, again, your attendance is being tracked by an attendance tracker. Okay, to have continuity with our discussion, guys, since dugay-dugay juta na putol sa tong discussion because last week wasn't able to discuss something from our sa atong topic because nga of my condition, and then prior to that week we also had our Charter Day celebration. So just to have continuity and some sort of review of the things that we were able to discuss last time. So we were able to discuss the occurrence and the functions of carbohydrates. Can anyone from the class can share what are those occurrence or general information about carbohydrates, and could possibly share no, some of the functions of carbohydrates being presented in the class? Yes, Mr. Kodada?
Yes, sir. Last discussions we discussed, or in the video presentation or this video discussion, we have learned that carbohydrates is a bioorganic substance, which is a substance that contain either carbon and oxygen, and which is the most abundant class of bioorganic molecule on Earth. And and its functions naman are there are six functions, which is the first one is that carbohydrates oxidation provides energy. The second one is carbohydrate storage, which is in a form of glycogen, provides short-term energy reserves. The third one is that supply carbon atoms for the synthesis of other biochemical substances. And the fourth one is that carbohydrates uh, form a part of the structural framework of DNA and RNA molecules. The explanation of that is that the five carbon sugars, the ribose and deoxyribose, occur in structures of DNA and RNA. And that the fifth function of carbohydrates in humans is that carbohydrates link to lipids as structural components of cell membrane. And the last one is that proteins functions in a carbohydrates that is linked to proteins functions in a variety of cell to cell molecule recognition process po.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kodada, for that very detailed explanation. Let's ask someone from the class to share his or her insights regarding the previous topic na na-discuss via lecture video. So anyone who would like to share some thoughts or some ideas, and I would like to appreciate no, those who can share using their own words, no, although I appreciate if you are able to enumerate those one, but if you are able to explain it using your own words, so much better, guys. Okay, so would like to share some ideas or some insights regarding the occurrence and the functions of carbohydrates. Okay, anyone from the class? Yes, Mr. Suarez?
Okay, good morning, sir. So I have learned, sir, during the discussion last week or about the discussion last week via lecture video. So I have learned that carbohydrates are very significant when it comes to our body because it serves as a one of our energy. Energy reserve, and it is also one of the common factors for the plants also for them to have their structure, and they're also their of course they're also carbohydrates are used as an energy for the plants. Also, sir, I have also learned that the carbohydrate is not that abundant when it comes to our body or sa atong lawas, but it is abundant sa ato ang planet planet Earth. And of course, the functions of the carbohydrates, if we're going to sum the things up, the function of carbohydrates in humans is it is serve as an, of course, an energy. It serve as an energy reserve, and it is also uh, things that are it is also the thing that is being considered as a structural support of all other macromolecules, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much, guys, for sharing your insights. And I have proven that you were able to watch those lecture video, and that's also um, that's also a testament that you are very much willing to learn because you were able to read also some of the insights no sa atong book. And now to have again continuity with our discussion, let's talk on the classification of carbohydrates. But before that, let's be informed with our lesson objectives. So at the end of this lesson, you or the students shall be able to, number one, to differentiate monosaccharides and polysaccharides with regards to their structures and function. So again, you are to learn the difference or the differences between monosaccharides as well as oligo and disaccharides and the polysaccharides with regards to their structures and function. And the last one is to describe the key chemical properties of carbohydrates. So we will be learning about chirality or handedness or yung mirror images. And if given the time, we will also try to know the structural formula of different carbohydrates as well as the isomers of these carbohydrates or the chemicals or compounds found in the carbohydrate. So again, these are the lesson objectives. So you are to differentiate and just describe. So these are just simple um, lesson objectives. I hope that we'll be able to achieve this one. Okay, so to start, again, we for this morning, we are going to talk about the classification of carbohydrates. But before we dig deep with the classifications of carbohydrates, let's know more sa name sa carbohydrate. So, asa gikan ang name sa carbohydrate. So, most simple carbohydrates have empirical formulas that fit the general formula C sub n H2 or H sub 2 subscript 2 N O subscript N or the CnH2nOn where N again should be at least 3 or more than 3. So there is an early observation by scientists that this general formula now is or can also be written as Cn quantity H2O quantity N. That's why it's their basis to term or to name carbohydrate as anhydrate, a hydrate of carbon. So when we say a hydrate of carbon, meaning to say its empirical formula or its structural formula includes a water molecule. So it's very clear naman na from this formula or general formula na sila na nakita nga na ay water ang carbohydrate. Although this is not a true viewpoint or this is not a correct viewpoint because in reality wala may water sa walay water nga makita sa carbohydrate. But tungod lang na siya sa iyang general formula nga murag nakita nila nga nay water. That's why dito nila gi-derive ang name nga carbohydrate as hydrate of carbon. So even if the the perceived name of carbohydrate as hydrate of carbon kay dili gid siya nag-describe totally sa carbohydrate, nagpadayon gihapon ang pag-name sa carbohydrate as carbohydrate. So today, the term is used to refer to an entire family of compounds or polymers, particularly those polymers or those compounds having carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and only some of which have the formula CnH2nOn. So that's for this carbohydrate. And please take note that most of carbohydrates are saturated compounds, meaning all of them have single bond or all of them are alkanes. So I hope now you still remember your some of the inorganic and organic concepts or mga topics in you guys, because these concepts are very vital or important in building understanding about a particular macromolecule, and in today's context it's carbohydrate. So that is for carbohydrate, and let's know more carbohydrate pag yun. So what is carbohydrate? So a carbohydrate is a polyhydroxyaldehyde, or when we say polyhydroxyaldehyde, guys, it's name or the aldehyde group has an alcohol. So naa siya OH, di ba? So na OH meaning it's an alcohol. Although dili gyud siya alcohol ang name sa iya. For example, in the case of a glucose, a polyhydroxyaldehyde, but the important thing to note is na ang presence sa aldehyde family or aldehyde group, which again is the COH. Again, remember nato tong mga inorganic nato nga natay RCOR, the RCOOH, o di ba, natay mga ingana na mga the R prime, mga R group nato or mga carbon group. So kana ato ang i-remember diri. So again, um, a carbohydrate can be a polyhydroxyaldehyde. It can also be a polyhydroxyketone. So when we say ketone, it's the RCOR or the CO. And please take note that this O being a divalent element is in a double band. So kasi divalent siya, or it's capable of bonding two pairs of electrons. So para dili na siya mapera og lain, so gidouble band siya sa carbon, and it makes sense because carbon in general is tetravalent, or it can be paired with four pairs of electrons, because these pairings or kaniya atong ginatawag na mga pag-pair or mga bonding, it's a result sa ilahang pagka non-metal, because they have this covalent bonding, because again all of them are non-metals. Because when we say covalent bonding, it's the bonding of non-metals to non-metals, or that's what we call sharing of electrons. So naalay pag-share, wala sila walay nag-gain o walay nag-lose og electron, because if naay mag-gain o naay mag-lose, that is for ionic bonding. And ionic bonding is metals to non-metals. Pero in the case of carbon, in the case of mga organic molecules, organic matter, they share their electrons, and that is through covalent bonding. So that's one of the things that you need to remember. So again, a carbohydrate can be a polyhydroxyaldehyde, and an example of that is glucose, and we have a polyhydroxyketone or the RCOR. An example for that is the fructose, or it could be the compounds that yields polyhydroxyaldehydes or polyhydroxyketones upon hydrolysis. So that's for um, carbohydrates. Okay, next we have the first classification of carbohydrate, which is the monosaccharide. And examples of these monosaccharides are, we have the glucose, the fructose, and the galactose. Again, we have the glucose, followed by the fructose, and then the galactose. So that's for the samples of these monosaccharides. So um, here are some of the things that we need to remember when we talk about or when we talk on monosaccharide. The first one is it contains single polyhydroxyaldehyde or a single polyhydroxyketone unit. So Kaya, from the word itself, mono, isa lang. So, kaya single. So, single polyhydroxyaldehyde or single siya na ketone unit. So, again, our example is glucose and fructose. So, isa lang ka unit of a polyhydroxyaldehyde or isa lang po ka unit sa polyhydroxy ketone unit. Okay? We also have here cannot be broken into simple units by hydrolysis reaction. Please take note that pure substances or mga basic units or mga building blocks nga mga unit, they can't be broken down into simple units na because again these are already simple units or mga basic units naman sila, so dili na gyud na sila ma-broken down or dili na gyud sila ma-simplify pa, just like in the case of elements or kana atong mga nasa periodic table, dahali na kayo, BMG ka, SR bara, and all of the elements found in the periodic table of elements, all of them are elements na. So all of them are simple units na guys. So meaning they cannot be broken down into simple units yun or simpler units na. So again, mga pure substances, elements for example, these monosaccharides, all of the basic units, all the building blocks, they can't be broken down into simple units because these are simple units na yun. So again, that's why they or we cannot simplify pa these mga simple units or mga basic units. So kung isimplify daw nato ang galactose or ang fructose, so wala na siya sense, di ba? Kung masimplify man siya. So again, it cannot be broken into simple units, either hydrolysis or whatever reaction ang atong gamiton. Because again, it's a basic unit na guys, so it's already a simple unit. Next, we have the examples. We have the glucose and fructose. So, nibalik na ni siya, guys. And pure monosaccharides, again, pag pure monosaccharides, they are water-soluble or meaning they are polar, they are white, and crystalline solids. So, I hope no, nga na-establish ang understanding kung unsa ang kalainan sa water-soluble and not water-soluble. So, it boils down again to our understanding kung ang particular compound ba is a polar or non-polar. So, mo na dapat i-establish nga understanding. So, when we say polar molecules or polar bonds, these are types of covalent bonds guys na nagnay equal ug naay non or dili equal nga pag-share, because again balik ta sa atong point nga covalent bonds are just sharing of electrons, walay nag-gain o walay nag-lose og electrons. So this non-polar covalent is na equal nga pag-share. So for example, same element, hydrogen to hydrogen. Hydrogen is a monovalent element because it's under group 1 in the periodic table of elements. So that's halina kayo down there. So when we say non-polar, meaning na equal share. So 1:1 because hydrogen has one valence electron or kaya monovalent siya. If it will be paired with the same hydrogen, so they shared equal electrons. So kaya non-polar. But in the case of mga polar covalent compounds or polar covalent ng mga elements, like for example, we have hydrogen and oxygen. So hydrogen again is a monovalent, and then oxygen on the other hand is divalent. So meaning it has two pairs of electrons, and if ato na siyang i-share with hydrogen which is a monovalent, then dili equal ang sharing because naay sobra nga pair of electron or naay sobra nga electron. That's why ang atong water is a polar compound or a polar compound, or it has a polar covalent bond. So, I hope na clear na siya sa inyo at dili lang kay mere understanding na polar si water. Pero again, the example for that is The explanation for that is covalent bonds has two types. We have the polar and the non-polar. And when we say polar, non-equal or dili equal ang sharing sa mga electrons. And then for non-polar, yeah, it has equal sharing of electrons. So that's the major difference between non-polar covalent and polar covalent bonding or bonds. So if there is a pure monosaccharide, usually they are water soluble, meaning they are polar because polar attracts polar and non-polar attracts non-polar, and they are white and crystalline solids. So that's for monosaccharide. And naturally occurring monosaccharides have 3 to 7 carbon atoms. And since they are non-metal, they follow katong mga mono, di, tri, tetra, so motosla. So if there is 5 na sugar, we usually call that as the pentose. If 6, we have the hexose, the heptose, di ba? So that's how we name mga uh, compounds that are non-metals. Diba? We just add prefix like the mono, di, and in naming also, according to IOPAC or the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, uh, in naming compounds, particularly non-metals, we add mono, di sa second element na, or we add the mono name sa second element na of the compound. But for first element of the compound, we don't usually add mono. For example, in the case of carbon monoxide, we don't say monocarbon monoxide because even if there is one carbon atom or one element of carbon, but instead we say carbon monoxide. So, kaya mo na siyang rule gid sa IOPAC. For example, if there are two naman nga carbon and two oxygen or oxide, we name dicarbon dioxide or pwede mo siyang ana. Pero naalay mga instances nga murag awkward siya, but it's really the rule of IOPAC. For example, if it's not an acid or if dili pod siya aqueous solution, we name HCl as hydrogen chloride, not hydrochloric acid. So I know nga na-introduce na siya sa inyo very well by Sir Plando. So I hope nga nag-retain lang na siya sa inyo. Again, the basis of our naming sa atong compounds is especially for non-metal, kay nga ato siya. That's according to the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry. So again, the naturally occurring monosaccharides have 3 to 7 carbon atoms, and 5 and 6 carbon species are especially common. And again, if we name them, for example, for 5 carbon species of carbohydrates, we call them pentose, okay, hexose, heptose for 6 and 7 carbon species of carbohydrates. Okay, so I hope na na-clear ang monosaccharide. So let's proceed with the oligosaccharide. So when we say oligosaccharide, it is a carbohydrate that contains 2 to 10 monosaccharide units covalently bonded to each other. So again, when we say covalently, they just share electrons. And a concrete example para or evidence to show that these compounds are just sharing electrons, walay nag-gain o walay nag-lose, is the Lewis dot structure. And I hope that you are familiar with the Lewis dot structure. Okay? So again, when we say oligosaccharide, it is a carbohydrate that contains 2 to 10 monosaccharide units covalently bonded to each other. And disaccharides are the most common type of oligosaccharide. So oligo 2 to 10, and then the common type is the disaccharide because again disaccharide from its name, 2 ka monosaccharide ang iyang gi-contain. But again, oligosaccharide 2 to 10. Okay, so let's proceed with the disaccharide examples. We have here the combination of glucose and fructose, which is a sucrose. We have the combination of galactose and glucose, which is lactose, and the combination of glucose, which is a monosaccharide, and glucose, another glucose, is the maltose. So that is the disaccharide. And again, disaccharide is an example or a common type of oligosaccharide, or the common type of oligosaccharide is disaccharide. So when we say disaccharide, it contains two monosaccharide units covalently bonded to each other. So from the name itself, nga na prefix nga di, so we can conclude or we can infer that this classification of carbohydrate contains two monosaccharide units. And again, they are covalently bonded to each other, so they just share pairs of electrons. And then it complete hydrolysis of an oligosaccharide produces monosaccharide. So because it is no longer a simple unit, then it can be broken down now through hydrolysis reaction. So again, complete hydrolysis of an oligosaccharide produces monosaccharide. And upon hydrolysis, guys, a disaccharide produces two monosaccharide, because again, it's just a combination of two monosaccharides. So if there is a trisaccharide, meaning pag i-hydrolysis mo dato siya, it can produce three monosaccharides, because from the name itself, trisaccharides, it contains three monosaccharides. If there are six or hexaccharide, it will produce six monosaccharides, and so on. So yan ang concept when we simplify oligosaccharide. So it will produce how many single units ang ang equivalent sa kana nga compound. So if there is trisaccharide, of course, three pod ka monosaccharide ang iyahang ma-simplify. And the examples for monosaccharides, we have the sucrose and lactose. And like monosaccharides, disaccharides are crystalline, water-soluble substances. So they are still um, polar nga type of covalent bonding. Okay? So I hope na clear ang oligosaccharide as well as disaccharide. So next we go to polysaccharides. So these polysaccharides are carbohydrate molecules which are made of long chains of monosaccharides. So which is the most basic unit of carbohydrate. So I hope na wala mo na nalibog no nga unsay ang kalainan ni polysaccharide and oligosaccharide, and if if oligosaccharide can be considered also as polysaccharide or vice versa ba. Pa-consider ba nato nga polysaccharide si oligosaccharide? That is our main question. So, a polysaccharide, guys, is a polymeric carbohydrate that contains many monosaccharides unit covalently bonded to each other. And to answer the question, guys, if dice or an oligosaccharide is oligosaccharide an example of a polysaccharide, or under ba siya ang polysaccharide? The answer is no, because polysaccharides are contain our polysaccharides often contain several thousand monosaccharide units. So, ang oligosaccharide, based from our discussion earlier, it's just 2 to 10. Pero ang polysaccharide, several thousand monosaccharide units. And both cellulose and starch are polysaccharides. So we have the example cellulose and starch as polysaccharides. So again, an oligosaccharide is not an example or cannot be considered as a polysaccharide, because ang oligosaccharide is just 2 to 10 monosaccharides, but for polysaccharides naman, several thousands na mga monosaccharide units that are covalently bonded to each other. So that's the difference between polysaccharides and the oligosaccharides. So we have here examples of the polysaccharides. So we have the cellulose and the starch. So again, cellulose, no, dili siya basically dili siya an oligosaccharide because again, um, sani, dili siya obviously a polysaccharide, I mean an oligosaccharide because it contains several thousands of monosaccharide. Okay, so na nag-mention sa ko guys si Christine, unsa nahitabo niya tay sa for a while advertise sa takadali. Nawala daw yung wifi. So, okay lang, Christine. So, confirm mo ni Christine, please tell her, okay lang. And we have the starch. Again, our examples for polysaccharides, we have the cellulose and the starch. So, we encounter these two substances everywhere. In fact, we were already able to discuss no, these two compounds. So, the paper on which the paper na atong ginagamit or kada mga libro nato, it's mainly cellulose. Okay, as the cotton in our clothes and the woods in our houses. So they are composed or they are made of cellulose. And the cell wall of our plants, it's made with cellulose. Diba? In our previous discussion, we made mention of these two carbohydrates, the cellulose and the starch. So for cellulose, it's more on the structural component of the plants. Okay, so that's for the cellulose. And then for starch naman is a component of, it is a component of many types of foods, including our bread, the pasta, the potatoes, rice, corn, beans, and even peas. So starch, as we all know, it's one of the byproducts also of our photosynthesis or the photosynthesis. So these two are the major carbohydrates nga gina-produce sa atong plants. Okay, so one is for structural component or one serves as the structural or just the framework of our plants, and the one naman is serving as the food of our plants. And we usually harvest this starch from the plants in order to make our own food as well. That's how or that's why we need plants. So our bread, just like what I've mentioned earlier, our pasta, the potatoes, rice, corn, beans, and peas. The potatoes is kuan na siya guys, kanang mura na siya o all of its parts kay pwede siya itanom, and ang iyang murag step is kana iyang mga mata-mata. Just to give you an idea lang, share lang nako guys. Okay, so that's for the classification of carbohydrates. Again, we have the monosaccharides, we have the oligosaccharides, and under oligosaccharides, we have the disaccharides, and then for the last classification, we have the polysaccharides. So, do you have any question, clarification before we proceed with another topic? Sige daw, anyone would like to ask a question? Or ako ang mag-ask? Char lang. Sige daw. Sige daw guys. Kung wala, please react like in our reaction panel. Sige daw. Yes, Miranda.
Sir, base sa akong nabasahan sir sa olisaccharide sir kay kuan siya sir nagaproduce siya og 3 ka monosaccharides sir.
Oh, that is trisaccharide. Diba?
So kuan sir
Ah.
ang oligosaccharide sir kay magsugod jud sa 2.
2 to 10.
Okay sir.
So, pag 2 to 10, so ang kaya common lang niya nga example si disaccharide kay iya mo man ang iyang ma-consider nga basic unit kay from 2 to 10. So iyang maximum is just 10. So kung trisaccharide or nitric monosaccharide under oligosaccharide. So upon hydrolysis reaction, so it will yield to 3 monosaccharide units. So again, pag oligosacharide, 2 to 10. So 2 to 10 monosaccharide. So that's 4 oligosaccharide. Sige, some more question or mag-proceed na ta. Natin na Grace gay na si Kian.
Ay sir, nag-wonder lang ko sir basta katong gisend gani nimong na student worksheets po sir. Ang ingon nimo ganina sir sa oligosaccharides po sir is na contain lang siya og 2 to 10 monosaccharides po. While ang naa po dito sa kuan sir sa worksheet po sir is 2 to 20.
2 to
Nagkakuan
20.
lang ko. Yes po sir. Wala to naglibog lang po sir.
So katong hard copy nga kung gihatag.
Yes po sir, katong gisend nimo sa GC po.
Sige, nindot no, nanatay nga na. So, basic 2 to 20 siya. Pero sa reference nga akong gigamit is 2 to 10. Pero, hantod siguro nga dili siya maabot og 1,000. It's an oligosaccharide. So, kuan daw to, verify daw na to. Kay, nganong sa ako ang reference is kuan siya, 2 to 10. And then, sa katong another na po nga reference, 2 to 20. Okay, diri is oligosaccharides represent carbohydrate that contains between 3 to 10. Anong 3 to 10 rin siya? Ganyan, dito kahit mabot siya 20. Sige lang. Regardless kung mabot man siya 20 or dili, take note na lang guys nga 2 to 10 lang yun. Okay, so kanila itong i-follow, that's 2 to 10 because even here sa akong gi-search diri the National Institute of Health, ang ilahag yun is usually less than a dozen monosaccharide. So, less than a dozen, so meaning not more than 12. So, pasok ang 2 to 10 2 to 10 as an oligosaccharide. So, kung maabot man siya 20, basig na ay mga 20 cute, pero we just follow na lang the 2 to 10 na oligosaccharide. Okay, so madaghan man og mga references nga mag-support nga 2 to 10 or 3 to 10. So isa lang man to siya. So i-follow lang nato ang 2 to 10. Okay, Kian?
Yes po sir,
some more?
nakita na po sir.
Sige. Sige, some more question or mag-proceed na ta? Okay, so siguro wala na yung mag-question. Sige, proceed na ta guys with our next topic which is chirality, handedness in molecules. So, monosaccharides, as we all know, diba, are the simplest type of carbohydrate. That's why it's named as the basic unit or the monomer of carbohydrate as the macromolecule or the polymer substance. Okay, so these monosaccharides, the basic or the simplest unit of carbohydrates. So before we consider or before considering specific structures and specific reactions of monosaccharides, we will consider first an important general structural property called handedness or ang mirror effect or mirror image sa mga carbohydrates, particularly mga monosaccharides, because most monosaccharides exhibit this handedness or we call that as chirality. Okay, so we have here a mirror image of a left hand which is in the back of the mirror. So atong left hand, okay, ato siyang gi-face sa mirror and as you can see, naa siya mirror effect or na siya mirror effect nga nahitabo. So most monosaccharides exist in two forms, no? So the left-handed and the right-handed form. So these two forms are related to each other in the same way your left and right hands are related to each other. So the relationship the relationship is that of mirror images. So it's actually we are gearing towards the topic isomerism or isomers, the same concept related to elements ng mga isotopes, which has these isotopes ng mga elements, they do have the same not neutron, but they don't have the same electron. For just like for example in our hydrogen. So we have the deuterium and the tritium as isotopes of hydrogen. So we are gearing towards that isomerism or isomer nga topic, the similar topic of isotope pero in a different context. Pero we need to know that kung atong bali-balihon ang mga or ang atong pwede na to mabali-bali ang ato ang mga the structural formula of our compounds, and then we call that as chirality or handedness. So pwede nato siya i-face using our left hand, or it can be presented also using our right hand as well. So again, they are related, they are just related, they are not different with each other, although they are being presented differently lang, pero in terms of function parehas sila og function, not like sa mga isotopes nga some of them can be unstable and some of them are stable. So ingana ang concept sa handedness in relation to our next topic, which is the isomerism. Okay, pero i-establish lang nato nga we have this chirality or kanang handedness or a mirror image sa ato ang mga compounds. So let's know more sa mga mirror images or the mirror image. So we have here a mirror image is the reflection of an object in a mirror. So when we have mirror, we usually talk on reflection. And during or if mabot ang time na you will be discussing reflection, please take note that the angle of reflection is always equal to the angle of incidence. So that's how we determine if a particular image is virtual or upright ba siya, kung kumusta ba iyang size, dako ba siya or gamay. So basically hindi pa mo makayon sa mga gina-istorya ni Sir later when you advance into your third year life, college life, then you will have waves and optics, no, a physics subject, and then you will be talking about this mirror and lenses. So again, when we say mirror, we cannot go away with the fact that the angle of reflection is always equal to the angle of incidence. And a particular object face to a mirror, usually ginatawag nato na siya image. So kung asa man mo banda ang image, dito ba siya sa focal length, dito ba sa center or sa infinity ba, that will be determined by the angle of reflection. But for now, let's have this understanding that if an object is placed in the mirror, then natay image nga mabuo. So this mirror image is just the reflection of an object in a mirror. So it's just the reflection caused by light and a specific angle. So pag iatubag na to ang atong kamot sa mirror, it will form an image because of light particles throwing from our mirror and mag-bounce siya sa tong kamot, and it will be reflected again to the mirror. Again, angle of reflection is always equal to the angle of incidence. And objects can be divided into two classes on the basis of their mirror images. So if there is virtual and not or non-virtual in our mirror, we also have these superimposable mirror images and objects with superimposable mirror. So the concept of mirror images is the key to understanding molecular handedness. And all objects, including all molecules, even humans, we all have mirror images. Okay, so that's mirror images. So again, when we say mirror image, it's just the reflection of an object in a mirror. And we have two major divisions or divisions of these images. We have the superimposable and non-superimposable mirror images. So let's define each types of mirror image. Let's start with the superimposable mirror image. So these are images that coincide at all points when the image are laid upon each other. So naka-mirror effect siya. For example, a dinner plate with no design features has superimposable mirror image. So here we have a picture of a compound, no, having connected to one carbon atom. So we have the bromine, the two hydrogen atoms connected still to our carbon, and our methyl. So these are the four groups rather na connected sa ato ang carbon atom. It makes sense because again, carbon is a tetravalent or tetravalent kind of element. So it can be or it can share four pairs of electron, and in this case it is sharing electrons to our bromine, to our hydrogen, to another hydrogen, and to our methyl. And if it will be placed near a mirror, take note that all points are laid upon each other. So all points are just the same, or ang image nga iyahang na form is just a copy because all points are laid upon each other, or pareha lang. For example, kung naadre si bromine, wala man abot sa ilalim si bromine. By the way, makita niya kung laser nga gina-present, guys.
Yes, sir.
Yes
Yes,
po.
yes, sir.
Sige. Sige. Okay, when we say, okay, when we have this bromine nga gi-present sa mirror, wala man na padulong sa ubos ang bromine. So, again, this point is just same sa mirror. So that's it's an example, or it's one of the classifications na, or it satisfies a criterion na ang superimposable daw kay all points. So i-check na nato ang bromine, check. How about ang carbon? Carbon is placed in the center. Pag tanaw sa mirror, is still in the center. So second point, check. The two hydrogen, they are placed on the left side, diba? On my left side, facing this screen, and then left side po sa mirror ang position sa ato ang duha ka hydrogen, and this methyl naman, or ethyl rather, this ethyl naman, in my advantage or in my viewpoint, it's is placed in the right side or on the right side. So na po just sa right side. So again, all points are laid upon each other, so they are, or that's why this compound mirror image. So you just need to remember that when we say superimposable mirror image, pagita po ako ko na yung isa. When we say superimposable mirror image, all points are laid upon each other. So all points, makita nimo nga kung asa siya gikan sa iyang original nga image or original nga object, mo pod ang iyang points, or di mo pod siya nga location nakita sa mirror. So they kanang equal ra siya. So that's why all points are equal or are laid upon each other. So that's the basic understanding na dapat nato ma-develop when we say superimposable mirror image. Okay, so I hope nga na-clear ang superimposable mirror image. Next, we have the non-superimposable mirror images. So these are images where not all points coincide with the images are laid upon each other. So not all points na pod. So if ganina all points ang atong i-remember when we say non-superimposable mirror images, dili tanan, or naay part nga pariha pero dili tanan. So we have here an example. The human hands are non-superimposable mirror image. So as you can see, kung nataan ning object, no, our unsa ba ni siya kamot, our right hand, kung atong right hand i-compare nato with our left hand, of course hindi siya pareha. Ang middle fingers lang sa right and left hands ang pareha, diba? So again, not all points. So our thumb is not the same kung asa siya because dili siya located yun, dili ni thumb. So I mean kani ang atong pinky is dito siya sa pikas, wala siya ni coincide sa kaninga part because kanin naka-designate siya sa thumb. So again, mora na itong timanan guys, ngayon tag non-superimposable, so not all points coincide each other, or when laid upon each other. So the two thumbs point in opposite directions, okay, as well as kaning mga other fingers. But again, only the middle fingers, guys, ang located exactly kung asa sila naka-point out. So regardless kung left or right hand na siya, but kaning atong middle finger, siya ang naka-coincide or I mean siya ang nag-coincide sa iyahang gina-reflect nga image. So, and the fingers do not align correctly. So, the two thumbs are in opposite directions and the fingers do not align correctly. Ang asa lang nag-align, again, is just the middle finger. But when we say, dili siya mo-consider as imposable or superimposable, because ang superimposable, again, is ang yang clue, all points. Pag non-superimposable, not all points. So, consider siya nga not all points. So that's why we have these humans' hands, or the human's hands, as an example of non-superimposable mirror images. So like human hands, all objects with non-superimposable mirror images exist in left-handed and right-handed form. So if there exists left-handed form and right-handed form, then that's an example of a non-superimposable mirror images. So kung pareha kani, wala may nag-exist nga left-handed form and wala nag-exist nga right-handed form, or ang iyang forma the same with the left and the right hands, then it's considered as superimposable. So kung nag-form siya karon og left and right hand form, then it's non-superimposable. Okay, next we have the chirality. So when we say chirality, it it is a term coming from a Greek word, care. So it means hand. That's why prior to this topic, chirality, we made mention of the handedness of the molecule. Okay, so chiral objects are said to possess handedness. Okay, so that's for chirality for a while, ha. Okay. So again, that is chirality, or from the Greek word care, which means hand. Ano sa man? Yan na. Pwede, uli niya na. Sila na. Sige na, kaya naklase pa ko. Okay. So, of particular concern to us is the handedness concept. So, nakabalo na ta na naatay handedness nga concept. We have the non-superimposable and the superimposable. So, let's focus now sa chirality, particularly sa chiral center. So, so there is this any organic molecule that contains a carbon atom with 4 different groups attached to it. So carbon atom, because again carbon is a tetravalent, so meaning it's capable of sharing 4 pairs of electrons. And when we say tetrahedral orientation, the base has 4 sa to gani banded, no, yeah, the lone pair and the 4 banded pair. So it's part of your inorganic chemistry. I hope nga natudlo na siya, guys, nga we have many structural names for banded pairs and lone pairs. And magsugod ang tetrahedral if there is 5 banded pair or naay 4 bonded pair and 1 lone pair. So I hope no na understand niyo na, or kung wala i-search na lang. So dili na nato na mabalikan because it's for your that's I think that's being discussed in your inorganic chemistry. So, tetrahedral again, ang ihang base is or contains 4 bonded pairs. So, mo na siyang concept nga kantay sa ato ang kinomo, we have 4 ball pens here and here. So, that's tetrahedral meaning 4. And then when we eliminate 1 pair, napod siya specific na structure na name. So for example, ang pinaka-base gyud niya is 2 pairs or 2 bonded pair, and ang iyang structure is bent. So bent siya, mura siya nakaana. So again, kung wala na niyo nasabtan nga concept, studyhin na lang ninyo guys. But that is our foundation to understand chirality. So again, we have this carbon atom being attached to 4 groups. So it could be hydrogen, it could be chlorine, bromine, iodine, basta kay upat sila nga gi-attach, and it's now considered as a tetrahedral nga structure. So meaning there are 4 bonded pairs and no lone pair. So it possesses handedness, and such carbon atom is called a chiral center. So, ang point lang sa chiral center is ang isa ka carbon nga naay upat ka mga sanga, so nasa sa tunga. So, kaya chiral center. So, naay isa nga nasa tunga and nakakonect upat ka buok. So, that is chiral center. So, mo lang gyud ang timana nato pag chiral center naa sa tunga ang atom and upat ang ni-connect sa iya. So let's have here the definition of a chiral center. I think we're running out of time, so pasuksan na to guys. A chiral center is an atom in a molecule that has 4 different groups tetrahedrali bonded to each other. So again, tetrahedrali, so it has four um, 4 bonded pairs. So naay upat ka gibond sa center. So again, our center is usually carbon because carbon is a tetravalent compound, or no, tetravalent element. So it can share four electrons or 4 pairs of electrons. So a molecule that contains a chiral center is said to be chiral. So if it has a chiral center, then it's chiral. And a chiral molecule is a molecule whose mirror images are not superimposable, meaning it's non-superimposable. And then chiral molecules have handedness. So again, kung naay-handedness, again, it's non-superimposable. So we have here an achiral molecule is a molecule whose images are superimposable. So kung chiral, non-superimposable, and for achiral naman, it's superimposable. So achiral molecules do not possess handedness, and a tri-substituted methane molecule such as bromochloroiodomethane is the simplest example of chiral organic molecule. So muna yung naong guys. So again, we have carbon here connected to a hydrogen atom, connected to chlorine atom, iodine atom, and bromine atom. And when we name that compound, usually we follow kung unsa ang una or alphabetical order. So we have here the bromine. That's why we started with bromo, chloro, iodo, then methane. So note that there are 4 groups attached to the carbon atom. Again, we have the bromo or the bromine, the chlorine, iodine, and the hydrogen. So this is an example of a chiral compound, or a compound that contains a chiral center. So this is the chiral center. So it's being attached to um, four groups or four elements. So that's bromo, chlorine, iodo, methane. So pag makita ninyo guys sa ato ang problem or sa ato ang equation, usually naka-circle man na. So you are to identify if that molecule or that atom has or contains a chiral center. So pag mingon tag yes nga naa siya chiral center, then dapat upat ang ni-connect sa iya. Okay? So that's for the chiral center. So we have here image A, so the mirror image forms in the molecule bromo, chloro, iodo, methane are non-superimposable. So meaning it has a mirror image. So for B naman, the mirror image forms of the molecule glyceraldehyde are non-superimposable. So these two contains image. So as you can see here, our carbon is being attached to four other groups. So it has a chiral center, as well as this carbon over here in our glyceraldehyde, it contains chiral center. And then the simplest example of a chiral monosaccharide molecule, 1101 na last again, of a chiral monosaccharide molecule is a 3-carbon monosaccharide called glyceraldehyde. So again, we have one chiral or one carbon atom being attached to an aldehyde group, and then alcohol group, and then we have the methanol. So this is an example of a simple chiral monosaccharide molecule. So I guess, so muna siya guys. Last, chiral centers within molecules are often denoted by a small asterisk. So, kani, so 2-butanol is naka-chiral po siya, 9 upat nga naka-connect. We have the 1-chloro, 1-iodoethane. So, naka-connect po 1-chlorine, 1-iodine, 1-methane, and then the hydrogen molecule or atom. We also have here the 3-methylhexane. So we have methyl or methane here. Propane rather. We have the propane. Connected to this carbon, we have the methane, and then we have the ethyl. So again, this is the propyl, we have the methyl, and para makita lang na to guys nga naka-chiral center siya or naka-connect na upat sa iyaha. So again, we have the methyl, the ethyl, and the propyl. So it's connected to one carbon atom, and we have the hydrogen as well. So again, all these molecules contain chiral centers, and to show you nga naa siya, naatay gi-attach nga asterisk. Okay, so I guess that's the end of our discussion. Supposedly naatay drill no to check kung naaba or nasabtan ba nato ang chiral center, pero nahurot na time guys, and napo kay klase with side 2C. So any question before ta mag-end sa atong klase? Any question, clarification,
Sir,
violent
pwede na
reaction?
tayo of PPT, sir.
Char lang, sige, try na ko, hatag. Ano naman? Char lang.
Sir, wala na sa